to good things. Winning the lottery, winning a prize, getting an A in a course. We adapt, we get used to it. Also with some surprising exceptions. One of the other surprises from happiness research is the effects of cosmetic surgery, like breast enhancement and breast reduction. One of the big surprises is it makes people happier, and then they stay happier. And one explanation for this is how we look is very important. It's very important for how other people see us and how we see ourselves. And you never get used to looking in a certain way. So if you look better, it just makes you happier all the time. So there are these exceptions. But putting aside the exceptions, the problem of adaptation is sometimes called the hedonic treadmill. And the idea is hedonic for happy. You keep on running, but no matter how fast you run, you stay where you are. You get used to it. Habituation is like you step into a very hot bath, but you get used to it. It's a cold bath. You get used to it. A difficult environment, an easy environment, you get used to it. The story is often illustrated. Is often illustrated with a story from the Bible in Ecclesiastes of a king. And this king had it all. He had gardens, parks, vineyards, castles, slaves, and concubines. And they were both male and female concubines. So he had everything, right? But it didn't make him happy. And here's what he says. I hated life. All is vanity and a chasing after wind, and there is nothing to be gained under the sun. Now, in these books I talked about at the beginning, these authors give advice on how to deal with the hedonic treadmill. How do you deal with the fact that everything you aspire to, once you get it, you'll be used to it, and it will lose its value? Well, one answer is that possessions are not the key to happiness. Possessions you very quickly get used to. From there are two alternatives. One is endless novelty. So one guy, I forget his name, wrote a book, and he says, look, there's a hedonic treadmill. The trick is, always do something different. Next week, have sex with somebody you've never had sex before. Then, climb Mount Everest. You get bored with that, become an accountant. Boring. Scuba diving. Boring. He had endless ideas. And that's the possibility. If you keep changing what you're doing, you'll never get used to anything. And you'll always be happy. At least he says that. Then there's the old guy alternative. Step off the treadmill. Give up. Give up chasing the whole happiness thing. And then seek out more substantial goods that might actually not make you happy in the simple sense of a quick fix of delight. But substantial goods like friends and family and long-term projects. So, the first moral of the science of happiness is that your happiness is actually rather fixed. It's fixed in part genetically, and it's fixed in part because what happens in your life you'll get used to a large extent. You raising your hands? Oh, sorry. The second one is happiness is relative. So there's a lot of research on money, power, and happiness. And remember, I did say before that it doesn't matter whether you come from a rich country or a poor country, as long as you're not starving to death. It kind of doesn't matter how rich your country is for how happy you are. But that's not the same as saying it doesn't matter how much money you make. In fact, there's a set point or a range, but there's some effect on your salary and on your job, on your happiness. And if you're desperately poor, no matter where you are, no matter who's around you, you're not going to be happy. But beyond that, your happiness depends on your relative circumstance. And this is an old insight. H.L. Mencken wrote, "A wealthy man is one who earns $100 more than his wife's sister's husband." The idea is, what matters isn't how much you make. What matters is how much you make relative to the people around you. And they've asked people this. What would you rather? You want to make $70,000 if everybody else in your office is making $65,000? Or $75,000 if everybody else is making $80,000? Does it matter how much money you bring home, or does it matter how much money you make relative to other people? Well, they're both factors. But relative salary, and in this example, people prefer this. They prefer to be making less if they're making more than the people around them. It turns out that there's research on British social servants, and their happiness and their health and the quality of their relationships and how they love their lives doesn't depend on how much money they make. It depends on where they are relative to everybody else. We are very status-conscious primates, and your role in a hierarchy, your level in a hierarchy, has a significant effect on your level of happiness. This is not really a secret. The opera star Maria Callas and the English professor Stanley Fish had the same negotiating strategy. When Fish got hired into his department, according to urban legend at least, he said, I don't want to talk salary. I don't have a particular number in mind. I just want to get paid $100 more than whoever's the top person in this department. And that's a guy who knows about happiness. He walks in each day saying, I'm paid more than everybody else. I don't care how much it is. It's just more. And that's relevant to happiness. We're now in a position to give some advice to the king, summing up. First, going back again to Dr. Nolan Huxama's lecture, I think the king is suffering from mild unipolar depression. So he should get some SSRIs and cognitive behavior therapy. I think he needs to move his castle to a quiet part of the kingdom. The noise of a busy castle is stressful. And he needs to give up on the concubines. He needs to find a queen. He needs to develop social relationships, join a club, get involved in charities, maybe a hobby. The final finding is a bit of a jump to a different topic. But, sorry, you raised? Yes.
What about, do people get used to changes in their, in like social interactions? Like if someone were put in solitary confinement, would you get used to that?
The question is, would you become used to changes in social interaction? An example is solitary confinement or prison. People get used to a lot of things. It could be that in those examples, there is a shift in status as well, and social relationships, and how you think of yourself relative to others. So that may be difficult to recover from. If you're popular at Yale and you go to prison, you're not going to be very happy your first few days in prison, probably. But then suppose you get popular in prison. People like you. You're the head of the book club and everything, and everything. My bet is, you'd rather not be in prison than in prison, but you'd probably be if you're a cheerful guy here, you'd be a cheerful guy in prison. The final case involves judgments of the pleasure and pain of past events. And I mentioned the Nobel Prize a little while ago as an example, but the work I'm going to talk about is actually from the one psychologist who's alive who's won the Nobel Prize. Sorry, one of the ones who's won the Nobel Prize, Daniel Kahneman. And he became interested in happiness. And you remember him from his rationality research, and this is some work on happiness. Here's an example. When you see the movie Marathon Man, it involves a dental torture scene. Imagine you're going to the dentist, and he's torturing you. Or it's like a cleaning. But it's really painful, and it's terrible. You're sweaty. You're squeezing the thing. You sweat, and it lasts for an hour. And then when it's done, the dentist leans over and says, "We're done now. If you want, we could stop. But if you want, as a favor to you, I have 5 minutes. I could top you off with some mild pain." This may seem like a very odd thing to ask. Here's the alternatives. What do you want? A dental procedure